We're going to continue our series Out of the Shadows as more and more Vietnamese arrived in Louisiana. They started forming vibrant communities. Part 3 of Out of the Shadows, how those communities would become crucial, not just for evacuees, but for those that would arrive later.
Cái nhà nào ba? So this is the house he rented. This is where my grandmother lived, and people like her, those older ladies, every single day go to church every single day.
Arriving from across the ocean and other parts of the country, many in the Vietnamese community were brought to towns such as this one, brought here for a sense of community and held together by a sense of faith.
So, the biggest thing you have to understand is that they escaped Vietnam from the religious persecution. And so what they had, the Catholicism, the faith, that's one thing that they couldn't take away from anybody, and that's what they took over here from Vietnam.
I could just imagine my parents thinking we're in this new country and we couldn't communicate and they didn't understand our culture. It was the late Bishop Mai Thanh Lương was very instrumental of gathering all of the Vietnamese immigrants together in a little village, what we call Versailles.
And so I guess Vietnamese community found a purpose and came together and created the church. Yeah. Everybody had a common goal.
That common goal created a sense of community, becoming a safe haven for those who would come later.
My family came to the United States on 1995. After we lose the war, the new government, they took everything. When we fly to America, they already have a Vietnamese group. They get a house ready for us, and they get medication and everything. They line up everything for us before we arrive to US. That is really impressive because we didn't know that gonna happen.
Those communities have since grown, and with a younger generation, the culture's starting to blend.
Sometimes in small little communities, you can only grow within that community. You can never grow and thrive outside of it. And what happens though is that the young professionals, although they still have connections to their communities, they don't live in the communities anymore. You're starting to see that move away, but you still have some that still come back.
Even so, those communities are still an important piece of Louisiana's landscape. A testament to the refugees and the children of those refugees working to help others grow and lead.
We're going to have the final piece of that special tomorrow. We're going to talk about what the future of those communities hold, some of the work that they're still doing as well, and why they're still such an important piece of the Louisiana puzzle. We've got the full special at KATC.com. We have it on our app. It's streaming on Roku. If you have Apple TV, Fire Stick, all that stuff, we have a KATC app. You can find that report there. So not only did these things start as a way for those who came over during Vietnam to kind of catch their feet, but Justin, who we interviewed, who didn't come over until 1995, he said, after the war, things were really bad in Vietnam, but his family stayed there, and he's got an incredible story. His father was a spy catcher for the South, and so they actually took his dad, and his dad spent time in one of those political prisons for, I think he said 6.5 years. His interview you can find in that web story, and so when the U.S. finally found out about this, they said, well, we can bring them over. We have a place for you to go, and you won't feel so isolated. There's a welcoming community, and you can understand and speak with people, and people who've been through the same thing. And that plane landed in Abbeville, was where he came. And so this whole support group is kind of existing throughout South Louisiana. And then as they go on to have kids and families of their own who are born here and raised with similar customs and traditions, but also the same customs and traditions of Louisiana. And so you're starting to see in some of these areas the Cajun culture and the Vietnamese culture kind of blend a little bit. And then, like we talked about, there's so many similarities that it's like a perfect marriage almost in food and custom.
And just watching that, I mean, you can tell, like, and are they worried that, like, some of these community, because I know, like, when younger people, whenever you're kind of going outside of your community and you're kind of trying to thrive on your own and have your own identity, they fear that they're going to lose that sense of.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I actually talked with Councilwoman Nguyen out in New Orleans about that very same thing, and she said there are some of them who are worried that they'll lose the language or they'll lose some of those old school traditions, but they work hard to keep it in place. So they will offer Vietnamese classes. They make sure that the same festivals are celebrated, and we did that last year in Lafayette. We celebrated Lunar Fest, and that's a not just a Vietnamese celebration, but kind of the larger Asian continent as well. And they can all come together and learn about the Lunar New Year and still try and hold a lot of the old customs and traditions. And that's where some of the pulling back to those communities kind of comes from.
Well, Daniel, we have really enjoyed all of these pieces. Again, guys, go and check out the full piece, because like you said, these are great, but the full piece does it justice. You get it all
flows
together.
a little bit better, and you can see kind of how one thing leads to another. And then, like I said, tomorrow, some of the work that these communities have done and are continuing to do, and kind of what the future looks like from here to wrap things up.